What you're about to hear is just about as clear a sign as any of the fragility of the presidential elections set for November 30th in Honduras. At the mic is the chief of the Joint General Staff, Roosevelt Hernandez, a close ally of President Xiomara Castro, on Saturday.
Muy respetuosamente le dije al Pleno que participáramos nosotros, las Fuerzas Armadas, en la parte de que nos compartieran a nosotros los resultados en la Junta Receptora de Votos, esa acta.
The head of the Honduran Armed Forces is saying that he asked the National Electoral Council, or CNE, to give the army a copy of each act, which is a legal document carrying the vote tally, and there's one for each voting table across Honduras. The army has never done that before. I'm Roman Garcia, the editor of Faro English, and this is our weekly podcast, Central America in Minutes.
In Nicaragua, the house arrest of Daniel Ortega's brother
relates more to El Salvador and Honduras than to Guatemala. In the case of Guatemala,
they say globalism comes to die at CIPA, but in El Salvador, it's already dead.
Central America in Minutes, an original podcast by El Faro English.
In Honduras, the National Electoral Council is the highest authority responsible for administering the vote and announcing the winner. The army is tasked with guaranteeing security, including transporting voting materials. But just 1 month before Election Day, already having gone through the primaries and without any new constitutional interpretation, the head of the armed forces says the army wants to run its own parallel count.
Solo nos interesa una acta, como reza la Constitución, que es el acta presidencial, de la elección presidencial, donde nosotros, pues, a través de esa información, de esa contabilización de los 5 partidos, nosotros recogerla y poder llevar esa información hacia nuestros centros de operaciones y tener nosotros también el conteo final de la parte presidencial. Así que nosotros haremos esa solicitud.
Hernandez says that the army is only interested in counting presidential ballots. And he claims this is all by the books in keeping with the Constitution. International observers, though, aren't amused. Jesus Delgado from the Latin American election watchdog Transparencia Electoral told the digital outlet Expediente Público that, quote, allowing the armed forces to access the voting acts or run a parallel count is an attack on electoral legitimacy. Quote, the risk of military interference in the Honduran elections is setting off alarms, the organization added. But the truth is, alarms have been sounding for months. This was the focus of the September issue of Central America Monthly, our digital magazine. During the primaries in March, the army broke the chain of custody of ballots in Tegucigalpa. But instead of investigating the armed forces, the public prosecutor's office launched an investigation into the CNE. Rotating Council President Ana Paula Hall of the opposition Liberal Party has said they won't allow the army to run a separate count. In episode 43, we explained how the 3 top seats of the CNE were divided up among the 3 main parties, in true Honduran style, and how the political rather than technical selection process has posed risks to the elections. As for the military, the army cannot participate directly in party politics. Since the end of the civil wars in Central America at the end of last century, constitutions have given them a role subordinate to civilian power. In Honduras, the elections this year have taken place under a state of exception, suspending constitutional rights in dozens of communities in Tegucigalpa and San Pedro Sula, the 2 biggest cities. The political crisis reached distressing levels in July, when Congress refused to allow the current president of the CNE, again from the opposition Liberal Party, to resign amid gridlock and threats of violence. At the time, she was a counselor. In August, the 3 electoral councilors from the 3 parties claimed to have reached a political agreement to keep things afloat. But they didn't say what it was. But whatever it is that they privately agreed to seems to have fallen apart again. Because last week, the ruling party representative, Marlon Ochoa, posted a video holding a USB stick, claiming he had turned it over to prosecutors, including 24 audio recordings of one of the other 2 counselors, he didn't say which one, plotting, quote, attempted fraud in the elections. The Attorney General, who was illegally instated by the ruling party Libre in 2023, already announced earlier this year that it would investigate the CNE for crimes including treason. And now his office has said they will open a new investigation into the audio files. The issue at hand, and our close Guatemala observers will appreciate this, are supposed irregularities with the private contract to run the TREP, or the Transmission of Primary Election Results System. It offers a projection on election day, but then has to be confirmed by the official CNE tally. In Guatemala in 2023, coup conspirators attacked the TREP in a baseless effort to claim fraud, and they failed. Neighboring Honduras knows a thing or two about coups, like the one in 2009, which deposed current presidential advisor Mel Zelaya. 16 years later, the head of the army's attempt to strong-arm his way into the vote count deepens questions about whether the ruling party, which is run by Mel, is interested in a clean race. Now we turn to Guatemala, where those very same coup actors we just mentioned tried to reactivate their plans this week.
Son las caras visibles de una mafia corrupta, golpista y autoritaria, de una alianza criminal que se siente amenazada por un gobierno que únicamente obedece al mandato democrático otorgado por el pueblo en elecciones libres y transparentes.
That's the president of Guatemala, Bernardo Arévalo, speaking in a national broadcast. On Sunday, October 26th, Arévalo declared Attorney General Consuelo Porras and Judge Freddy Orellana, quote, enemies of the country. He's been on his heels recently, waiting from political crisis to security crisis. We covered that last week. But then his opponents cut him an unlikely break. On October 24th, trial judge Orellana ordered the Supreme Electoral Tribunal to dissolve the official party Semilla, essentially seeking to annul the 2023 election results and removing a mayor, 24 legislators, and the president and vice president. This is the exact reason the same judge was internationally sanctioned in 2023, when he intervened 5 weeks before the presidential runoff. He tried to cancel Arévalo's party on the grounds of just 12 signatures that prosecutors claimed had been forged when the party was formed years prior. Arévalo has repeatedly promised to dismiss the Attorney General, but it wasn't until that national broadcast that he requested that the Constitutional Court dismiss her and Orellana. He had presented a bill to expand his power to remove the top prosecutor, which has gotten nowhere. And that's partly because the Constitutional Court ordered him in May 2024 to not, quote, violate Porras' term, which ends in May. In Orellana's case, his removal must pass through 2 disciplinary councils before the Supreme Court can make up its mind. And this isn't the first time. According to public records, Freddy Orellana has faced 18 removal requests since 2019. The Supreme Court has rejected 14 and 4 are pending. But this time could be different. The Constitutional Court suspended Orellana's order on Wednesday and warned that he may have ruled contrary to law, a crime punishable with 2 to 6 years in prison. Despite the setbacks, new attacks are speeding ahead. Just after the court's rebuke of Orellana, prosecutors asked to strip the immunity of Arévalo and Vice President Karin Herrera, arguing they had breached duty for the escape of 18th Street gang members from prison. You can learn more about that in episode 49. The Supreme Court has said nothing on that request so far. With just 6 months before the president appoints a new attorney general, it looks like their bare-knuckle sparring is entering the final round. Thanks for streaming Central American Minutes, written by Gabriel Labrador, Juliana Ramazzini, and me, Roman Gressier. All things sound designed by Omnian. Find us wherever you do your streaming, and we'll be back next week. Hasta pronto.